Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk Live, which is the first show to kick off NBC Sports on Peacock every day, and then PFTPM that's later on today on this great streaming channel. How are you, Mike?
Doing great, Rich. How are you?
So let's start with this. What do you know about these tests and the positives?
Well, the league began the season and went through the first 5 weeks of the regular season without testing players on game day. That's a fairly new dynamic. And what it shows us is there still is that possibility that a guy can have a nasal swab performed on a Sunday morning, and they can get the results on Monday, and the conclusion will be, if it's a confirmed positive, that the player was positive for the virus, shedding virus in the locker room before the game, on the field before the game, on the field during the game, on the sideline during the game, and in the locker room after the game, which now means for the Ravens and for the Packers, they have to hold their breath and see what may happen over the next few days because of the incubation period. And, Rich, one of the things the NFL realized just in the past week, the sidelines present a greater risk in the NFL's estimation of spreading the virus than the field does.
No kidding.
Because on the sideline, you see it all the time. Guys are sitting right next to each other, extended stretches, no masks, and so the NFL has recommended social distancing and mask wearing on the sidelines, but I didn't see a lot of it yesterday, and that may be the next step in the agreed protocols, that it'll be mandatory to distance and to wear masks on the sidelines on game day.
Now we all have to hold our breath because, again, it's not just the Packers with the running back A.J. Dillon or the Ravens with corner Marlon Humphrey. It's the Steelers and also the Vikings, who have dealt with this before with another team that's tested positive. It was Houston, if I'm not mistaken, that was involved with that, or another team of some sort earlier this season. But there's also an early game this week. The Packers, the incubation period, if we're talking about Dillon potentially spreading it around yesterday, might not, I guess, come to fruition before game day on Thursday. Mike?
And the one good thing for the NFL so far, the only data point, you refer to that Vikings game, it was the Titans game week 3 when the Titans were on the front end of their outbreak.
Mm-hmm.
There was no crossover between Titans players and Vikings players. And the league has been very confident, Rich, that in an open-air setting, on a football field, even in a dome, because they have state-of-the-art ventilation systems there that have been engineered in advance in the event of an aerosol terrorist attack, and they don't talk about that stuff much, but the precautions are there. They believe the air can be cleaned out quickly and is cleaned out quickly, and so it's a far less of a risk than it is being in a confined space. So they believe there won't be on the field. They don't believe guys are in enough sustained contact to give it to each other. So we'll see. We have one game from 5 weeks ago where it could have happened and it didn't, and now we've got 2 games from yesterday where it could have happened, and we'll see. But you're right. Look, we've got a Thursday night game. What do? Do you just go forward and just, as there are more positives, guys are knocked off of the lineup, and then you take the contacts out of the loop as well? Do you do everything you possibly can to put people on the field on Thursday night and get that game in? Do they move that game to Sunday or Monday or Tuesday of the following week? I mean, there's some flexibility, but not much, because the bye weeks are no longer an option and for most teams. And so, at some point, if you're talking about a postponement, you're talking about an 18th week. So, yeah, these are a bunch of issues that are going to keep coming up until there's a home market bubble for 32 teams that is effective and that keeps guys from testing positive. You're going to have people who go home. They go out into the community. The numbers are going up coast to coast. So you're going to inevitably have guys who get it when they're not at work.
Then I guess the last thing on this subject matter is, because I was, very critical that Major League Baseball would have a World Series game where somebody tested inconclusive the day before and then found out that the test taken day of game, he was in fact COVID positive and removed from a game in the 7th inning. So are we saying that even though NFL is testing every single day, including game day, the fact that they're taking these tests on game day and then sending them elsewhere as opposed to maybe having a rapid test on site, which might not be as accurate, that we're seeing potentially a loophole here where players could test positive and, play a game positive, and we may see somebody removed in the third quarter of a game because of it, potentially.
I asked the league last week after the Dodgers game whether or not it could happen that there would be a test result that comes back during a game, and what would the league do? Mm-hmm. The league said it's unlikely, but it's possible that that would happen, and they would immediately remove from play a player if they get the positive result back. So much of it, though, and this is old school, low tech, how far the van has to drive the samples to the lab, or how far the plane has to fly. I mean, it has nothing to do with the actual testing technology. It's how long does it take to get the sample into a spot where it can be tested. So the closer the game site is to the labs that the NFL has throughout the country that are handling these samples, the less time for the turnaround. And, it would have to be a night game. The players for night games are tested mid to late morning. So you get an 8 o'clock start, an 8:30 start, whatever the case may be. That's when it potentially could happen that we would have a guy yanked in the middle of the game. And the NFL is very confident that if it's a championship game, if it's a Super Bowl, that the player will not find his way out of the isolation room onto the field to celebrate with his teammates and anyone else who may be there. The league is very confident that they will not see that happen. And after we've seen it with baseball, the NFL can't say, well, we never saw that one coming.
Mike Florio here on the Rich Eisen Show, host of Pro Football Talk right here on Pro Football Talk Live and PFT PM right here on NBC Sports on Peacock. And there's also, of course, his stellar website and Twitter account. Let's talk about the trade deadline a day away. Is there anything popping that you're hearing right now?
We know a week ago the sense was any deals that were going to happen would happen by Wednesday or Thursday of last week because of the COVID-19 protocols, because of that 5-6 days that you have to wait to actually join a new team. You want to do the deal by Thursday so the player can then show up and practice the following Wednesday. That's the first major work day for a Sunday game. Now that we've gotten through that, and we're at the point where, hey, if you do trade for somebody, you're not going to have him week 9 because of this waiting period that automatically kicks in. Even though the guys are tested every day on the team they come from, it makes no sense that doesn't translate. It's the same tests, it's the same procedures, but it still doesn't translate. So now I think what we're going to see is teams who understand whoever we get, we don't have the guy until week 10. So maybe we give up less than we would have given up to get him. And plus, you have one more week of games. You have teams that maybe were thinking about buyers, like the Lions. They bought last week with Everson Griffin. Maybe they would have been thinking about trying to get Stephon Gilmore from the Patriots if they had beaten the Colts yesterday. Now they lost. Maybe they don't do it. Team like the Jets falls to 0-8 yesterday. Avery Williamson gets the all-time gift of any holiday. All of them rolled into one to go from 0-8 to 7-0 in Pittsburgh, and he's thrilled with that. Not that the Jets wouldn't have done it if they'd won yesterday, but still, having that one extra game, that one extra week, that one extra number in the win column or the loss column, that really does help crystallize. And also injury. Remember the Carson Palmer trade from 2011? Broken collarbone for Jason Campbell with the Raiders. Deadline 2 days later. Raiders give up way too much for Carson Palmer. So there could be an injury tonight in the Tampa Bay game that causes the Buccaneers to scramble tomorrow to fill a need that may arise in that game against the Giants.
Where do you stand on the subject matter of Trevor Lawrence staying in school to avoid the Jets? Everybody's talking about that right now. I'd love to get your 2 cents on what you're hearing and what your thoughts are on that, Mike Florio.
Well, Rich, I think going back to Clemson and playing for free isn't the answer. I think that what you say is, I don't want to play for the Jets. Go ahead and do the John Elway, Eli Manning thing. I don't want to play for the Jets. I don't want to play for the Jaguars. I don't want to play for this team. I don't want to play for that team. And if you draft me, I'm not going to sign a contract. And I'll sit out the whole year, and you will have wasted that pick, Bo Jackson style, and I'll re-enter the draft next year. Now, the problem is you're always at the mercy of being selected by the worst organization in football that year. Absent a trade or some kind of a fluke where you fall down the board like Lamar Jackson did or like Patrick Mahomes did because the guys who really believed in Patrick Mahomes kept their mouths shut and it didn't get out that Mahomes is the guy. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Mike McCarthy were the three who were really on to Patrick Mahomes, and they were discreet about it. The cat's out of the bag on Trevor Lawrence. Now, maybe if he doesn't play next year, others will emerge and he'll slide down. But still, you're always subject to that involuntary process. So I'm a big believer in guys pushing back against the concept of them being told where they're going to start their NFL careers. They're allowed to pick which college they go to. I think they should be allowed to pick which NFL team they go to. I know that would be a subject that would fill up an entire 3 hours.
Oh, my God,
if we were
yes.
to go down that rabbit hole. But I think that a guy who has leverage a guy like a Joe Burrow, a guy like a Trevor Lawrence should be willing to say, I don't want to go there. It worked for Elway and Eli. Not enough guys do it. And so the last thing he should do is go back to Clemson, Rich. What he should do, if he doesn't like the menu of options of teams that may pick him, make his wishes known privately, publicly, or both to avoid playing where he doesn't want to play.
Well, I guess the one way to handle it would be to telegraph to him sometime, obviously, when it's obvious they're going to get the number one overall pick. The Jets still have a lot more losing to do, and there are still some one-win teams hot on their heels. It would be to telegraph who's going to be the next coach, in a way, right? I mean, that it's clearly not going to be Adam Gase, who's into whose hands Trevor Lawrence is placed. Why does he still have a gig right now, Mike?
Well, I keep thinking that the bye week is going to be the moment that it happens, and if it doesn't happen then I don't think it'll happen at any point this season. They've got one more game against the Patriots before they enter their bye. They just look. I feel bad for Adam Gase. You look at the last 3 years. You know, he took a team to the playoffs in Miami, and then the 2017 season had the Ryan Tannehill torn ACL early in training camp, and they had all sorts of schedule changes. They ended up burning their bye week 1 that year because of a hurricane and played 16 straight games. And it was, and you know, look, everybody deals with injuries and those things, but it just feels like it's been a snowball that just keeps building for Gase wherever he is. It hasn't been good with the Jets. They're not competitive. We've talked about this before with the Panthers. You look at how they're playing while they're rebuilding. The Jets are just not competitive. It felt like they were a little competitive yesterday until, you know, Patrick Mahomes did Patrick Mahomes things, and that was that. But I just feel like it's got to happen, right? It's got to happen during the bye week. And my only hesitation is it's always hard for reasonable minds to predict the behavior of unreasonable minds. And I just feel like that there are unreasonable minds running the Jets. And so, you know, if Christopher Johnson isn't willing to do it, then it's not going to happen. And if Woody Johnson isn't going to pick up the phone and say, what the hell are you guys doing over there, make this move, then it won't happen. But I agree with you, Rich. Part of this is letting Trevor Lawrence's people know what's going to happen in New York in 2021. And there's a window in, you know, early January. Once it's clear that the Jets have, quote unquote, earned the first pick, there's a couple of weeks before Trevor Lawrence has to make his final commitment. So there can be some back-channel discussions about what he would like to see and whether or not the Jets would be willing to do it. And then he's going to have a decision to make. Do I declare for the draft or do I not? But I still think he should, and then continue to work the process. And if he doesn't like the outcome, if he doesn't like who picks him, then just say I'm not showing up and hope that forces a trade and be willing to sit out the whole year if need be.
Couple more minutes left with Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Let's talk about Miami. It sure looks like the coach there knows exactly what he's doing. And by that, I mean he brought kind of the Belichick, Brian Flores game plan against the Rams and just kept hitting golf in the mouth. And that, along with some special teams play, is what helped with Tua, who looked like a rookie, as you might imagine, against a defense like that. But they seem positioned, not just for this year, but with draft choices galore because of the Texans trade. They look to be well positioned in Miami. Would you agree with that, Mike?
Oh, absolutely, Rich. And I think one of the reasons you put Tua on the field is there's a chance the Texans are going to be in position to draft Trevor Lawrence, and that means you as the Dolphins are in position to draft Trevor Lawrence, and it could be the same thing the Cardinals went through a couple of years ago where they moved on from Josh Rosen after one season because Kyler Murray fell into their lap. So, yeah, absolutely. I think they've got something good going on. It wasn't Tua yesterday. He had 93 yards passing. When you look at the statistics out of that game, I've never seen a more jarring difference. 31 first downs for the Rams, 8 for the Dolphins, 471 net yards of offense for the Rams. I think 150 for the Dolphins or something ridiculous like that. And you would have never dreamed that the Dolphins would have won that game. But it was the defense. It was Brian Flores. And this is something Chris Sims was saying all week on PFT Live. Flores was there in New England as they got ready to play the Rams in Super Bowl 53. He knew what to do to slow down that offense, and they did it repeatedly. They built the lead, and they held on. So I like what they're doing. But, yeah, they're going to need to see Tua eventually do something more than he did yesterday.
Well, I mean, then next up is Kyler Murray in Arizona, and that's definitely something I can't wait to see in Week 9. Before I let you go, I'll just give you an omnibus. What's the story you're looking at right now that's developing or football-wise over the next few weeks that you're eager to see play out, Mike?
I mean, I hate to go back to where we started, but I really do just kind of keep constant watch of where trends are moving with the virus. I'm amazed and I'm impressed that the league has been able to get through 8 weeks, and we'll assume, knock on wood, that tonight's game doesn't get derailed by some last-minute positive test or last-minute outbreak. But to get through 8 weeks and have all the games played. Now, they all weren't played when they were supposed to be played, but they were all played. I keep worrying about how that plays out over the next few weeks. And look, Rich, I know sports is our haven from all the other things we worry about, but right. I worry about the aftermath of this election. Whatever happens, however long it takes to resolve it, whatever the outcome may be, does that cross over into sports? Because one thing we've seen this year, issues like that and the unrest that follows can affect sports. And will there be some type of a reaction within football, depending upon whatever it is that occurs tomorrow, the next day, the next week, the next month?
Well, and one thing for sure, I know you're bringing it up here, is stick to sports is dead. With Jack Nicklaus and Jay Cutler and Brett Favre making their preferences known in a manner that if other athletes did, it would be stick to sports straight down the Twitter feed. Stick to sports is dead. And
hey, I didn't hear stick to sports when Favre made his endorsement. Isn't that weird?
Maybe
I just wasn't paying attention that day.
It is weird, Mike. But hashtag stick to sports to me is dead forevermore. Thanks for the call, Mike. Always appreciate catching up with you and you accepting the invitation to come on. And I look forward to PFTPM later on and every single day Pro Football Talk Live to kick things off here on NBC Sports on Peacock. 22 million subscribers strong. It's good stuff.
Thanks, Rich. Hey, great talking to you, pal.
Right back at you. That's Mike Florio at Pro Football Talk. Must follow, must everything. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.